About the pardons, I understand the president, any president, has total authority to pardon anyone he or she wants. And that includes commuting sentences and includes restoration of gun rights. You know who Liz Oyer is.
Yes.
And you know who Mel Gibson is.
Yes.
All right, Mel Gibson was convicted of domestic violence. What he did was he punched his then girlfriend in the teeth, threatened her with a gun, while she had their infant in her arms. Now, it's the president's decision. He can restore Mr. Gibson's gun rights. That's not your decision. But my understanding is you had a pardon attorney who, when requests were made to restore gun rights to domestic abusers, they'd be vetted. Mental health issues, other issues, and that's because 500% increase in homicide rates of domestic abusers who have guns. You asked, or one of your people asked, Liz Oyer, to provide a letter that basically said, okay, we can restore his gun rights. Is that correct?
That happened the day I was starting. I know Ms. Oyer has claimed that
it was 2 days after.
I know that Ms. Oyer has claimed that that had anything to do with her firing. I didn't even know of that. I had known nothing about Mel Gibson or that letter when I fired her. Nothing.
So why did you fire her?
For a number of reasons. For one,
you were there 2 days?
Yes, for a number of reasons. It had nothing to do with Mel Gibson. The decisions that she had made as pardon attorney in the weeks and months leading up to the end of President Biden's term were completely inconsistent with President Trump's authority, including recommending commuting every single individual on death row, which even President Biden didn't do.
Right. I'll let the Americans be the jury of whether that sounds right.
Mr. Blanche, you represented the president in at least three criminal cases: the hush money payment case in New York, the January 6th case, and the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. You said when you appeared last before this committee, you would consult with ethics lawyers about that apparent conflict of interest in handling any case involving the president, having been his personal counsel. Did you consult with Joseph Terrell, a senior ethics lawyer at the department?
I believe I met with Mr. Terrell, yes.
Did Mr. Terrell tell you that ethics laws and policies required that you not be involved in cases involving your prior representation of the president?
Yes.
So in those three matters, the hush money payment case, January 6th case, Mar-a-Lago case, you were to recuse yourself?
I'm recused, correct. Well, by the way, the cases are not ongoing, Senator, but to the extent there's any work around those cases, yes, I'm recused.
So you said to CPAC a couple months ago, the other things that are happening, there is not a single man or woman at the Department of Justice who had anything to do with those prosecutions, meaning the prosecution of the president. So you're saying that it's not a conflict of interest for you to be involved in the firing of prosecutors who prosecuted your client, your former client? There's no conflict there? Is that
no, there is. I wasn't involved.
So
that would be a conflict.
At CPAC, you're taking credit for the firing of these Department of Justice lawyers, but you're not willing to take responsibility before this committee. Is that the case?
No.
Okay.
I'm making, there's a
you
statement I gave at CPAC.
You were bragging about this at CPAC, the firing of these prosecutors, the firing of the FBI agents, the getting rid of everyone who investigated your client. You were proud of that, speaking for the Department of Justice, but you don't think that's a conflict of interest. You moved to vacate, I don't think you're going to deny involvement in this, you moved to vacate the convictions of 12 Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, which erased their convictions, restored their gun rights. These people were convicted in the January 6th investigation, which also involved the president, who you represented. You were involved in dismissing those cases. Let me ask you about another matter. You have your name on. I don't think you can deny responsibility here, and that is the IRS settlement agreement. So yes, you put your name on this. That absolves the president of tax liabilities in the past. The president was convicted in the case you represented him in of falsifying business records in part for tax purposes. Does this settlement not absolve the president of any liability for tax crimes associated with what he's already been convicted of?
That's not what he was convicted of. Not having to do with
Well,
for tax
I'm happy to
purposes.
read the statement of facts. The participants took steps that mischaracterized for tax purposes the true nature of the payments made in furtherance of the scheme. So you know,
The
Mr.
participant
Blanche,
there was not the president. It was somebody else.
Well, if the president is conspiring with others to falsify business records to help them cheat on taxes, he is also exposed to liability. You know that as well as I do.
He can't be audited for that.
And of course he can be. Of course he can be. And he can be prosecuted for it. But the agreement you signed on behalf of your former client, on behalf of your current client, in a staggering example of self-dealing prohibits that. Let me ask you this. Does this tax agreement, this addendum you signed, also hold him harmless from any audit or tax liability with respect to the billions in crypto money he made in his first year as president?
It's not forward-looking. So to the extent there are taxes filed by the president or his sons or the Trump organization after the date of that agreement, there's no protection.
Well, but before that agreement, so any
So
taxes...
he hasn't filed taxes
so
yet
any-
for money he made last year, right? So
Yes.
no.
So if he
So no protection.
if he filed tax returns this year for money he earned last year, that his sons earned, that his World Liberty Financial, all those people earned and defrauded taxpayers on it, he faces no liability under this agreement you
There's
signed.
no evidence taxpayers were defrauded, and he
But
is not
there is
protected.
there's
He
evidence
is
in
not
this
protected.
agreement
He's
that
not
you've
protected.
absolved him of any liability over
No, I
it.
just said he's not absolved. So the question
So this
was,
agreement doesn't apply to a tax return filed last year
To
or
tax
filed this
returns-
year.
to tax returns filed after the date of the agreement? No,
No,
it does not
before the
apply.
agreement. A tax return filed in this calendar year.
Let me talk to you for a moment about the survivors who are in the room. There are 10 individuals who were exploited and abused by Mr. Epstein. They are here today. None of them have had a chance to speak to anyone in the department or FBI, though they've asked repeatedly. So can I get your word under oath that within the next 30 days, you will personally sit down with these 10 victims and hear their case in terms of what needs to be done by the Department of Justice?
Chairman, I appreciate them being here today. I also have somebody from my office who's spent her entire career working on cases like Mr. Epstein's. She's in charge of our task force investigating human trafficking. She's available to talk to them.
She can sit right next to you. She can sit right next to you when you meet with these survivors.
I have never said I will not meet with survivors.
Will you meet with
so
these 10 survivors? I'm asking you on the record.
If they have lawyers, as you know, I'm prohibited from meeting directly with them. I have met with counsel for survivors, as has many people in the Department of Justice,
you
over
won't-
30. But if they are represented by counsel, we will work with their counsel. If they don't have a lawyer, I will certainly make arrangements to make sure the right people at the Department of Justice meet
Will you
with
get
them.
it done?
Absolutely.
Will you get it done within the next 30 days that each
I
of
will
these
get it done
survivors?
today if that's necessary. I mean, my point is there's somebody here who can meet with them today, get their information, and arrange to meet with them.
I think you ought to be
Absolutely.
in the room.
Pardon me?
I think you ought to be in the room because you ought to hear this. You've had singular responsibility for these files. There's a delay in meeting the statutory requirement of disclosure. You were involved in that. I think you ought to be part of this.
I am definitely part of it, and I have been from day one.
And it will be done within the next 30 days.
I can keep on repeating myself, but I said it could get done as soon as today. It could have gotten done last week. We remain available to meet with any victim or their representative at any time.
Will you notify the committee when you've done this?
That would be prohibited by law if they're talking about an ongoing investigation.
I'm asking you if you'll notify the committee that you
It
met with the
depends on what they
survivors.
said. I'm not sure I'm allowed to notify you if there's an ongoing investigation.
Well, you're dancing on the head of a pin here.
I'm not dancing on any pin
You
at
have
all.
these survivors who have the courage to come before this committee, have the courage to tell their terrible stories, how they were.
So since the Civil War, along those lines, federal law has made it clear that the president does not have the authority to deploy armed federal officials to election sites. Will you commit to following clear federal law and not deploying federal agents to polling locations?
I will commit to following the law, Senator, of course.
And one of the things that doesn't get as much attention is the non-death cases. The Hmong elder pulled out of his house in Minnesota in his underwear and Crocs in 10 below zero weather. And as the nation's chief law enforcement official, do you agree that it is unacceptable for federal agents to forcibly enter someone's home without a warrant and drag them onto the street without even checking that they have the right person?
Well, it depends on the circumstances, as you just.
Did the White House have any involvement in that decision
In the decision regarding which
to
case?
settle the Ticketmaster case?
We work at times closely with White House counsel on certain issues. I am sure that I wasn't directly part of discussions, but so I can't speak to that. But I'm most certainly not saying they were not part of it.
Why won't you tell us what became of the $50,000 in confidential money that the FBI reported that it gave to Tom Homan?
I'm not aware of what you're speaking about. To the extent that there have been public reporting about an investigation, I know nothing about it.
Well, the public reporting is that the FBI...
The judge in Florida referred your misconduct. She concluded that there was misconduct and misrepresentation and improper purpose in that legal action to the Bar of New York for potential discipline, including losing your law license. I know you disagree with the result of the ruling. Has that kind of referral ever happened by a federal judge for an attorney general of the United States?
Can you?
I don't know, but I'll tell you something. That judge never asked us to respond.
One last question. Would you agree with me that agents of the United States should not fire into cars unless fire their weapons into cars unless there is an...
Since last year, DOJ has sued 30 states seeking their voter lists. 14 of those lawsuits have been resolved by federal judges. Mr. Blanche, did any of those 14 federal court judges from across the country agree with DOJ's legal position? Again, yes or no?
With some of the legal positions, yes.
Pardon?
The answer to the question is yes.
Did you discuss her transfer to another institution, yes or no?
No.
Well, just 1 week after your meeting, Ms. Maxwell was transferred from a low-security federal institution to a minimum security prison camp. Were you involved with that transfer?
When, as I've talked about before, in the time leading up to me going down to meet with her, we learned that she was receiving threats. It turned out when we
I'm
were
going
there,
to interrupt you for a matter of time because...
Okay, well, it's not a question I can answer, apparently, in the time that you're giving me.
I'm going to tell you this.
Coming back to January 6th, there have been several of my colleagues who have asked about the quote-unquote slush fund. Do you personally believe that someone who forcibly entered the U.S. Capitol and assaulted law enforcement should be rewarded with taxpayer money? Yes or no?
I can't answer it yes or no, but if you want the answer, I think that the fund that doesn't exist anymore set up parameters where, no, somebody that you just described would likely not recover funds.
Which brings me to my other point, because several members have asked, and I know Senator Tillis specifically focused on the weaponization slush fund and language versus declarations versus appropriations bills on how to undo this. I also need to be clear that January 6ers should not be able to seek payouts from other sources, including the Federal Tort Claims Act. Do you commit to vigorously defending taxpayer money from being paid out to January 6 riders, those who were convicted of their involvement with January 6, regardless of the source of funding from the Department of Justice?
You're talking about a statute that exists and it allows anybody to seek to file a suit against the United States. So I can tell you we always vigorously defend our cases, but I can't speak to a particular case.
Well, we know this is a hypothetical. There's been at least 4 letters that I've signed on to, along with Senators Durbin, Klobuchar, and Whitehouse, who asked earlier about the status of January 6 riders seeking.
Go on. If you had an issue, there was a dispute about, say, Paramount, would you have a lawyer from the Justice Department who owned $9 million in stock negotiate on behalf of the government with that company?
It depends on the...
Now, maybe there's some nuance I'm missing here, but it sounds a lot to me like this guy didn't tell the truth. Have you thought about investigating this guy for perjury?
We take testimony in front of this body very seriously. Yes.
Good. Well, I think he absolutely should be investigated. I think he absolutely should be prosecuted, if at all possible. And based on his responses under oath, I think he should be. And I think it's time that we say that these people who did this, who engaged in this mass illegality, blatant violation of separation